Paige Innes. I'm with Gibson Sotheby's International Realty. I have been a real estate agent for the last 20 years, with having the pleasure of being with Gibson Sotheby's International Realty for the last 17. So today I'm going to share 7 key differences between buying or selling a home in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. So let's dive in. So there's many things that make Massachusetts and New Hampshire similar, but there's a couple of things that make us different. One of them is when a buyer finds the home of their dreams and they want to let the seller know that they're interested. So in Massachusetts, they have an agent that writes an offer, and if the offer is accepted, the seller will sign the offer and the buyer will move on to the next stage, which will be P&S. Also, it should be noted that in the offer form, they will state things like mortgage contingency, home inspection, maybe they're interested in certain furnishings. That all goes in the offer. And then they get to the purchase and sale once they've done the home inspection. In New Hampshire, the process is completely different. In New Hampshire, they have no offer. It's a much more streamlined way of doing business. So they go straight to purchase and sale, which might be a little unnerving considering you really haven't been able to do a home inspection. But they will allow you to do a home inspection, so stay tuned. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Another key difference between Massachusetts and New Hampshire is how they use attorneys. So first, Massachusetts relies heavily on attorneys once the offer has been accepted. And I'm not saying that your agent isn't involved, but really the attorneys are much more involved in the transaction. Versus in New Hampshire, attorneys play a less central role, with agents taking the lead. So I said earlier when I was talking about how in Massachusetts a buyer will put in an offer and it will be in their offer if they want to do a home inspection. And I said earlier also that in New Hampshire, they don't have the offer form. So what does a buyer do in New Hampshire if they want a home inspection? Well, they're going to do their home inspection after they've signed the purchase and sale agreement, which is very different than Massachusetts and makes some people feel a little uneasy, but it really shouldn't, and I'll get to that in a second. So I just mentioned a couple of seconds ago how a buyer might feel a little unnervy signing a purchase and sale without have done a home inspection prior in New Hampshire. And here's the difference between Massachusetts and New Hampshire when it comes to disclosing information. So in Massachusetts, sellers are not required to disclose defects unless specifically asked. In New Hampshire, they have a much stricter disclosure laws, requiring sellers to provide more information up front. And of course, you as a buyer might have additional questions, but when you go to the property, there's going to be a lot more information about the property if you're buying a property in New Hampshire up front than there will be if you buy a property in Massachusetts. So the disclosure laws are much stricter in New Hampshire than they are in Massachusetts. So it should help you rest easy if you have to not do your inspection until after you've signed your purchase and sale, if you're buying a home in New Hampshire. So another big difference in Massachusetts is when you're at the closing table. So you will notice that in Massachusetts, there's a lot more people involved in the transaction. Not only do you have your real estate agent, but you also will have your real estate attorney that has been with you from the point of when your offer was accepted all the way to closing. And in New Hampshire, the process is much more streamlined. And I mentioned earlier that attorneys do not play a central role in a New Hampshire purchase, and they do play a central role in Massachusetts. So you will notice actually that when you buy a home in New Hampshire, the process is so much more streamlined. And you often find that maybe one party plays more than one role in the transaction in New Hampshire. So you don't be surprised if the transaction in New Hampshire moves faster than it does in Massachusetts. Escrow and title. So both states emphasize these are protections. but handling them varies based on who facilitates the closing, which makes them different. So another thing that makes Massachusetts and New Hampshire very different is how they handle like certain closing costs. So for example, the transfer tax or certain fees that sellers have, they are likely in Massachusetts to pay those fees. So the deed transfer tax is paid by the seller. In New Hampshire, on the other hand, buyers and sellers will split those fees or costs taxed equally between the two of them. This shouldn't be a surprise to a buyer that is buying a home in New Hampshire because it will be noted on your closing disclosure, or otherwise known as your CD, and you'll be notified 7 days prior of all costs that are going to be coming up at closing. But again, it's a big difference between Massachusetts and New Hampshire. So before I leave you, I want to leave you with a couple takeaways. First off, when I created this video, I didn't want to make it seem like one state was better than the other. Both are fantastic states to call home, but both of them have a few differences that it's really important, especially if you're a Massachusetts resident that is thinking about buying in New Hampshire, that you need to be aware of those differences because it could be a shock. I know when I first got licensed in New Hampshire, it was amazing to me how two states could be so different when purchasing a home. So that was the purpose of why I created this video. But when you're looking at these two states, you need to think about that basically New Hampshire basically has a faster, simpler process, while Massachusetts involves more steps but offers extra legal protections. Thanks for watching this video, and if you enjoy this content, please follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and of course YouTube, where you can find great resources on real estate tips and tricks. And if you're buying or selling in Massachusetts or New Hampshire, please reach out. I would love to have the opportunity to help you. Thanks for checking out this video. Stay tuned for the next one, and I'll see you real soon.